And welcome to Radio 5G. This is Nancy Hopkins. Michael is not with me today, but I do have Mark Steele. Mark has been with us a number of different times, and he is acknowledged as the authority in this 5G thingy by two judges, certified court authority. So we've covered a number of different aspects to this. But right now, I'm going to introduce Mark to you. Mark, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, Nancy. Great to be back on, yeah.
Oh, it's so good to hear your voice. You've been very, very busy. What have you been up to? I mean, you've been all over the place.
I've been all over the place. Well, what I'm trying to educate people as best I can and get them to understand what 5G actually is. It's a lot of, 5G is actually a basket of different technologies. It's not just a mast at the end of your road. We identified 5G in streetlighting a while ago. And obviously, once I veiled myself with the technicalities of it, I was astounded to find out that was in fact a sophisticated target acquired weapon system. Unbelievable, obviously.
Now, Mark, let me ask you something, because you did a video that I took the snapshots off the screen for, and you're taking apart an actual LED light, a street light. Where did you get this?
I got a phone call off a guy. He said, I've got something for you. I'm going to leave it somewhere. It's just a box. Thought, yeah, that's quite interesting. Anyway, I don't know who the guy was. Anyway, we went to the location, picked up this box, cardboard box, rather large one. I thought, that's quite interesting. Anyway, I opened it up at the scene.
You didn't call the bomb squad?
Well, I have had a few threats, but I'm not the easy threatening type, and I have been told that, unfortunately for the cabal, can't kill me. The believers, the whole of heavens will fall down on top of them if they do. Or they try to even. I think it's quite an interesting story behind that, which we'll talk about one day, maybe in the future. But anyway, going back to the box, I opened the box, and what we had inside the box was a full breakdown of the full light head. Now, obviously, prior to that, we only had parts of the lighting system equipment which had broken down in the past. Because, like I said before, I was absolutely astounded at what was being installed in a street light. So sheer ignorance, stupidity, and arrogance is a sophisticated target acquiring weapon system. And we've seen a lot of other pieces of these equipment, because not all the same. It doesn't all look like a small antenna. There's some masquerading as light sensors. They look just identical like light sensors. In fact, Telenza on their website tell you they make it to look like a light sensor, and this 5G equipment.
Okay, now let me just jump in here. Anybody that is watching this right now, if you can see the promo for the show, or if you're on chat, the picture is up there, but in Facebook it's up there too. And so what we got here is the LED that has got only four little lenses in it that puts out this tremendous amount of light. But when you got this thing, you then filmed it being taken apart so that people could see what was really hidden inside of it. Because if you flip it over and the top of it, it's just got this little antenna kind of thing on it. It doesn't look like anything really important, but what the hell is it doing on an LED light? Okay, so you take it and you actually open up the inside of this. And when you opened it up, now you'd already seen some of the components in it, had you not? But you didn't see the whole thing together like this, correct?
Well, yes. Well, obviously I'd seen them in the streets, and obviously I knew they weren't very good, because I know that LED street lights, and especially ones that are on panel got diffused, are pretty toxic. However, I want to just explain something to people. I'm not a joiner, all right? I'm not an electrician. I'm a weapons expert, all right? So when I see a bit of 2x4, so this is a lump of wood, I see it as a club. right? It's like the butt of a weapon. It's like the butt of a gun. The butt of a gun has got a metal plate in it, so you can use it as a club. They're actually built. You don't just, you don't actually have a gun, a rifle that just fires bullets. The other part of it, you can use it as a club because you sometimes run out of bullets. Believe us, and ask anybody that's been in the battle zone, they know only too well. They run out of bullets pretty quickly. You also have a bayonet on it. You might have a grenade launcher on it. So a weapon is something that can be used to do bodily harm. People have to understand that. Ask any prisoner in any of your high security prisons. They'll use a lump of wood. They'll smash it and make a shank out of it. Or a little bit of a metal clip, or a bit of a tin can, or a cup. A cup's pretty interesting weapon. If you're smashing into somebody's face. We know a lot of people in the pubs where, somebody sticks a glass in their face. Well, when I look at any device, I always look at it through the eyes of a weapons expert. So when I looked at the LED street light, what I'm going to say to people, the lights, the LEDs, are retina and retinal cell toxic. These are the 450 nanometers. Blue light is toxic to life. Not only is it toxic to humans, it's toxic to small pollinators. All life is damaged with this non-spectral balanced pulse modulator. What they do is use a square wave and the pulse modulator. So the actual light fit in itself is part of a weapons program called soft kill. All right? It's a weapons program called soft kill. The LED lights are toxic. What they actually occasion, the increased cancer risk, neurological disorders, can actually cause fits at certain pulse rates. But one of the things that humans need, what people need, is melatonin. Melatonin is a fantastic resistor of the body where it attacks. It actually increases your ability to attack cancers and cancer cells in the body. Now, if I pull this 450 nanometers, I damage your retinal cells. The retinal cells, these are the photosensitive cells in your skin, in your eyes, and the rest of your body. That then affects your ability to produce melatonin. If I suppress your melatonin, cancer. Now, the Germans, believe it or not, during the war, they used a thing called Zyklon B because they thought that it was humane to gas people, but to kill them quickly. What I'm going to say to people, these LED streetlights that they're deploying across your streets, across your cities, in your towns, where you're being forced into having them for some carbon reduction policy. Well, the carbon reduction policies are going to get rid of you. They want you dead. The United Nations Resilient City Agenda is to deploy LEDs. Now, people go, that's unbelievable. I can't believe what he's saying. Well, I'm going to tell you how you can believe it. I'll make it easy for you. When they deploy these LED streetlights, there's no public consultation, there's no environmental impact or health impact analysis, because if there was, it would fail. They're basically lasers. They're lasers on a stick. All right, so the whole lighting column is part of a weapons program. It's like 5G. See, a lot of people still believe foolishly that 5G's got something to do with our mobile phone communication. I'm trying not to laugh there, by the way, because it sounds so ridiculous to me when I think that people don't understand that what 5G really is. 5G is a collimated signal in the air. It's radiation tightly bonded in air. It's a weapon. Phased. It can be phased. It can be fired through an antenna with a dielectric lens. But if I bombard you with a collimated signal, it's significant power density, then obviously I can do you significant harm. And the reason why a lot of the troops come back from these battle zones where they've been hit with target acquiring weaponry on the battlefield, whether it be on a tank or some other type of weapons platform, and it causes brain injury. So that causes the neurological disorders. And the reason why I can't cure them by giving them, antidepressant drugs, because they've actually got a physical brain injury. So,
okay, Mark, let's focus on this for a little bit so I can get clarity on it. Okay, when what you just said is that a lot of the people on a battlefield, the soldiers on a battlefield, are inadvertently subjected to the energy coming off of equipment that is targeting equipment, that can see through the vegetation, that can look, beyond buildings to be able to see. And they may be their own troops in front of them, but they get blasted because it's just there. And the guy on the other side, he is not being targeted by a rifle. He's actually being targeted by electromagnetic waves that can cause all sorts of dysfunctions in him. Is that correct?
That's correct. I can find somebody, I can look at somebody in an urban environment and find what sort of weapons that they're carrying, and I can identify them as either friend or foe. God help the friend who wants to walk around with a Kalashnikov rifle. I know some special forces quite like them, as it happens, because of the very robust bit of kit, but they could potentially be the targets. Now, the emission itself, when you use a phased array antenna, you get what's called side lobe leakage. So you get side lobe leakage. Anybody who doesn't get this, go and read into Grundman weapons systems. I'm sure you can find something on the internet that'll substantiate this. And one of the issues was the blue on blue, where your own troops would suffer significant detrimental damage from these weapons. However, it was decided that the capability of this equipment is so large that, killing off a few of your own troops was just negligible compared to the capability of the weapon. So consequently, that's why they went ahead with the weapons developments. There should have been a moratorium, a bit like chemical weapons. These weapons, because they've been used in secret by spy organizations. So let's say I can come into your home, I can target you as an individual. You hear about targeted individuals. The intelligence agencies have used them for a number of years to disrupt and to destroy and damage people. I was talking to a military guy, you'd actually use them for some assassinations. Now, if I was to ban them, they should be banned. There should be a moratorium, bit like the nuclear weapons moratoriums and the sort of the sophisticated weaponry. These weapon systems are illegal on the battlefield, but they're being used as with a sort of title as battlefield interrogation. They get away with it because they are very, very sophisticated battlefield interrogation pieces of equipment. But what they don't tell you, it's actually also a weapon. So the weapons come to the streets near you as 5G, because 5G, in one of its main technical parameters, is the antenna design. The antenna is either an offset signal, which is phased beam waves, causes beam waves. Those beam waves are punched out from the antenna. They're very, very powerful. There's another way to actually do that. You do by using dielectric lenses. The one I uncovered in the streetlights in Gateshead Council, where they had fitted this weapon, this target acquiring weapon.
Okay. Let me just stop you here again. Now, what he's talking about is in the photographs and in the video. He takes apart the thing that's sticking up in the antenna on the LED. He took that device apart. Now you got a black thing that's sticking up from the top of the light itself. But when that's only a sheath over this antenna system that is a green antenna system, and that's what you're talking about right now, correct?
Yeah, all that is, it's a PCB board. It's a PCB board with a high gain with a very thin strip of copper heading to the top, and at the top there's what's called a dielectric lens. It looks like a teardrop. All right, it's very much like a teardrop. It's printed in there. It's actually a lens. It's a lens. It's a specific lens, and what that does, that allows me to collimate a signal coming out of the top of that antenna and direct it at a target. Because obviously that's one antenna. We've got 31,875 three-dimensionally mapping the whole of Gateshead as we speak. And we've got radiation levels in bedrooms that are in breach of the law, in breach of Council Europe 1815 resolution. So they're in breach of the law. I haven't even turned it up yet, because I can tell you now, when I broke down the hardware, there's a 450 volt capacitor on the antenna board. Now, I'm going to go back to a bit of electrical design. You don't put things in electrical equipment that you don't need, because obviously the more capacity, the more expensive it is, because obviously you use more copper, more gold, more silver, more soda. You have to have thicker boards, and obviously all that equipment. So what you need to do is you need to keep it down to as little as possible. I can scan your home with a scanner, with a 12-volt scanner. Your mobile device, the mobile you carry around in your pocket, which is pretty toxic, by the way, and very, very powerful, operates on a 3.5-volt battery. So you then go back to the antenna that's in the streetlight. Now, obviously, prior to you getting there, you're in the UK, I don't know, in the US, I think it's 110 volts, your average. We're 240 here. So you take a 240 in, and what you would do in the first instance, you would step it down. You would have a step down, so you'd have some transformers in there to reduce the power going forward. And the reason why you want to reduce the power is you want to reduce the cable cost, reduce all the hardware that you're putting into the lights, because obviously the LEDs operate on very, very small amounts of power, extremely small wattage. All right? So why do you then take a 240 volt input, put it onto a board, and then boost it up to 450 volts? There's a 450 volt capacitor on the board. Now that capacitor, I'll explain what a capacitor is. Capacitors, years ago when people used to have cameras with flashes on, right? Well, what you do, you put a capacitor in the flash, because the batteries can't discharge the energy very quickly. So what you do, you put a capacitor in it, and the capacitor discharges the energy in a millisecond. Right? Obviously, you can have capacitors that actually leak it out, but you do mostly capacitors are for this flash, where you can get the power out in a millisecond to do the most damage. Well, that 450 volt capacitor, believe us, can do a lot of damage down that antenna, especially with a focused beam. So the whole thing, the LED streetlights, as I've broken down in the video, and I tell everybody to watch it. It's not the only one. I think what people should watch in the first instance is the 5G Apocalypse documentary that was done by Sasha Stone, and with myself involved in that. You need to watch that one first, and then watch the LED streetlight weapons breakdown, because the 5G and LED are interconnected. It's an interconnected deployment. The LED is part of a program called Soft Kill. It's part of the 3D mapping capability in your environment. It is illegal. It is unlawful. These are only weapons systems to degrade and destroy countries, obviously manufactured in China, as we know, and shipped to a town near you at the behest of your local authorities and corrupted organizations who are fitting this. Everybody knows that optical radiation is hazardous. So incandescent light, the lamp in your home has a shade on it for a reason. They've known for years that optical radiation is a hazard. Now, incandescent light is pretty risky. Fluorescent light is a little bit more risky, but that's in a diffuser in a ceiling, right? And then you've got the most dangerous, non-spectral balanced LED radiation emitter, 450 nanometers, retina cell toxic, can harm a person, and your local city council would fit them without having a diffuser on them. Bare elements pouring toxic radiation all over your environment, where you can't help but either catches goes through your skin, damages your eyesight, causes macular degeneration, causes advanced macular degeneration, and blind you. We've already got a number of people in Gateshead going blind. I've also just had some reports today of further evidence of people getting brain cancers. I always talk to a guy in Bristol. Bristol's quite a while away from me, but he has two neighbours one friend he plays in a band with, and another neighbour who lives a couple of streets away. So he's got two neighbours in the same flat complex, a neighbour round the corner in another street, and a band member who've all just recently developed brain cancer. So not surprising, because Bristol was one of the test beds for 5G.
Let me jump in here again, because everybody out there, was going along not realizing that we were under attack by 4G and then 4G densification. But the 5G all of a sudden is there, and it has to get their attention because it is absolutely so awful and so insane. However, I want to tell, and you know the story, but I want to tell a quick story here, because when I was in the Army in like 1973, I was the safety officer for my unit. And I was called to a meeting of all the safety officers, and they proceeded to tell us that the night vision goggles that were being used in Vietnam at the time were actually, and they had a red, it would look red to you if you put them on, they were red, that this was found to be doing damage to the eye, and so they were switching it, and now you see the green in it instead of the red. But so that was my first introduction to the concept that what's this with light, But I said, and here I am, I'm with all these officers. We were all officers, and I said, well, how do we, communicate with the troops that have already had this happen to them, because they were telling us it wouldn't show up for years, and I'm going like, well, there's got to be something you can do about it. How do we contact the people that have been exposed to this danger? And the room got really quiet, very, very edgy. And finally, the guy that was the head of it, he was a colonel, he says, well, this is classified information, and this can't leave the room. And I'm going to myself, what the hell? Why did you bother telling me if I can't warn people and do something about it?
What I'm trying to do is need to get people to do as I told you. The issue we've got with 5G, you can't do that. There's too many of these, what I call them button polishers, button polishers. Far too many people about, right, who are just sitting there, right, and not fighting back, and they're going to die. 5G absolutely is the greatest existential threat to mankind. It's not, like I said before, I thought it was quite funny when people would say, I'm going to get a faster speed, for me mobile download. 5G's got nothing to do with your mobile device. That's just a masquerade. It's like the autonomous cars. Autonomous cars will never ever come as long as I'm on this planet. I hope to be on a little bit longer. And I can tell you how. I haven't got the data capacity anywhere in the world. Do you know what I mean? Think about it. You see the breakdown I do of the equipment on the streetlight. It's a very sophisticated urban radar scanner. Yeah. Where they put the data. So you've got maybe 100,000 homes in Gateshead, scanning them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 3D mapping their homes. Do you know how much data that takes? Massive amounts of compressed data, right? So we've got these antennas. Harvard Technologies actually produced from their business plan before they went bankrupt, before they went skint. They fitted 600,000 of these transmitters, these illegal target acquiring weapon systems, all right? But where's the data going? So if you're scanning from 600,000 transmitters and 3D mapping, where you put the data? I'll tell you where. Nowhere. I haven't got the data collection. It's the same as this energy efficient. What do they call it? Where where they're going around to people's homes to check their bins, where you've got to compartmentalize all of your tins and your like some sort of green agenda. They just put them all in the same row. They're still going the same. What it is, we're living in a complete and utter fraud. And it's so easy. It's so easy to dispel this. I mean, it's like we've got one of the most highly valued car companies in the world, Tesla, the highest valued automotive vehicle business on the planet. Why? Electric cars, first and foremost, will give you cancer. Do the people know when they find out? Do you think it's going to be much of a business? Did the people who invested in it, did they know that electric cars give you cancer, and especially your children? Did anybody know about that? Was there any tests done? There was some tests done on some other electrical cars, and believe it's not very good. What they show is that you can drive them for no more than 30 minutes. Now, one wants the car that you know drive for 30 minutes. It's absolutely ridiculous. And especially in the US, where people travel quite some distances, not like UK, tiny little island, where, you know, maybe just a couple hour car drive would be excessive. In America, you travel a lot further. I mean, people go for a cup of coffee and spend a couple hours in their car. So electric cars are a total scam. The whole thing's a fraud, a total, absolute, unadulterated fraud.
Okay, let me see if I can get this now. All right, so the lens system that is on this antenna thing is actually scanning. It's not for telecommunications at all. It's actually scanning like a radar would, but a radar at an energy field that allows them to do 3D mapping, which means they can look inside the building and see you in bed. Correct?
Totally. Strip away. How it actually works, you send the signal in. Obviously, the 868 doesn't get stopped by anything, but there is disruption as you come through the brickwork. And what you do, you strip out that disruption. I've got the pictures. I've got some lovely 3D mapping pictures from these type of transmitters. They look pretty nice because they're coloured. Because obviously the computer sees them in a different array of colours, so they look quite nice. Very, very toxic. And that's why the sub-gigahertz was long-range radar, and it's very, very good at interrogating the urban environment. So it interrogates the urban environment well, and that's why I was really, when I first come across this, found out what they were doing. Obviously, the sub-gigahertz, I immediately, put two and two together, I thought radar, and then once I got my hands on the hardware and saw this dielectric lens, I thought, thinking, trying to kill us. Because why would you? And then I looked at the autonomous cars. The autonomous cars, that's a focus collimated signal off the top of the streetlights. That's well documented by the IAEA. But it's not about that. Autonomous cars are a scam. It's not happening. It's a fraud. It's like all these, fake it till you make it businesses like the electric car. I mean, it's like the Tesla car. The Tesla car is a dirty bomb. I can take a charged electric car into a cityscape and blow it up. All right, I can use 5G to blow it up. I can attack with all those antennas. Can you imagine focusing those antennas and let the car in a cityscape, making the battery blow up? And then obviously I've got this lovely charged lithium-ion battery exploding in a cityscape. I mean, you talk about toxic. I mean, that is a dirty bomb. So there's all of this stuff that's never been looked at, never been sort of assessed by the security services, and tells me that somebody is deliberately asleep at the wheel. Because if I can see it, why can they not see it? Can I be that stupid? And they have watched my videos, and they have had enough documentary scientific evidence of me about the technology to understand what it is. So what are the intelligence agencies doing? Who are they now working for? Because I've sent this to MI5, MI6. MI6, the head of MI6 actually spoke about the existential threat of 5G. And then all of a sudden his son had an accident and died on a motorbike. So that was quite interesting.
You're saying that the person that was in MI6 that was actually getting involved in this died?
No, his son died. His son died. Yeah, 18-year-old boy died on a motorcycle accident, which is all pretty suspicious to me. But, that shouldn't stop people from fighting back, because what's going to happen, you can only die once. They kind of keep coming back and killing you. And I'll tell you now, dying at the hands of 5G is going to be pretty. It's not going to be nice. I can tell you now.
Well, my brother died of a brain cancer directly associated with radars and cell phones because same signal, but it's terrible. I mean, it's absolutely terrible. I'd much rather be, like you say, assassinated, because that's quick. What's happening to people? I mean, unless you have, everybody by now has known somebody dying of cancer. And there's nothing wrong with death, but dying can be a bitch. And when you do it in a 5G environment, wow, that's real torture. Now,
well, what I'm going to say to people, Nancy, believers, they need to get with the program. Otherwise, what's going to happen? They're going to burn in hell. And they don't just die quickly, they're going to die slowly. I like it. There's a little, it's John 20, is it John 25? Yeah, it is. And what he says is, John 24, 5:24, right? It's verily, verily, I say unto you, he that heareth my word and believeth on him that sent me hath everlasting life, and shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death unto life. Because what we're talking about here, it's all prophecy. You know, these things have been mapped out. Obviously, you don't get the full story in the Bible, but God put me here for a reason. Not only did he put me here, he actually made us invent quite a number of products. So I know exactly what that thing was on top of the street. It was pretty bizarre. I mean, I remember there was an ex-US military operative who contacted me and sent me some stuff that's still in the government, so I'm not going to name them. And they sent me some images of a piece of equipment on a telegraph pole in the US. And this particular person had been in military signaling systems for quite a number of years, and admittedly stated that they didn't know what it was. And they said, because you're like the expert on 5G, can you tell me what it is? And I'm looking and I'm thinking, I know what that is. Didn't look anything like 5G, but I knew exactly what it was. And what happened, I'd invented a reactor, a molecular reactor for breaking carbon dioxide. It was another project I was doing a few years ago. I realized the whole carbon thing's a scam. And I thought, well, I can break CO2, you start to have the right frequency and pulse rate. You can break it, carbon's worth of value, so is oxygen. So we can fix this whole thing. What I'll do, I'll stick a reactor in a flue, in a power station flue, and use the fluid dynamics of the airflow to drive a generator. So you can drive a generator, and at the right frequency, with the right transducer, well, I can crack CO2, make some money. So
okay, before we go, let me get in here. Okay, you're talking about the fact that in the stack that's the problem with the carbon, that they're taxing the carbon and they're all fearful of the carbon. You said that you could put a device in there that would essentially take the toxic material and change it into oxygen and carbon dioxide and oxygen, so that you have what are you calling this?
It was a molecular reactor.
A molecular reactor. So at the molecular level, you're able to take the problem of carbon getting into the atmosphere away with a very simple, very inexpensive device that would actually be in the smokestack itself. So from where it starts to where it gets out, you've already molecularly changed it into two non-hazardous molecules. Carbon dioxide.
Exactly. Well, what I was going to do is crack CO2. I call it the CO2 cracker. So anyway, I invented this thing. We went out to try and get the money. We couldn't get the money, but I knew that carbon dioxide is the green gas. It actually causes the green in the. So it's absolutely got nothing to do. I mean, the whole thing's a scam. It's a scam. But what I thought, well, I'll stop the scam by inventing this product. But however, this image that got sent to me was a molecular reactor, and she said to me, "Well, what do you think it is, Mark?" I said, "Well, I can tell you what it is because it looks like my patent." Very much so, and I can tell by the cooler boxes and the radiators that are actually fitted inside it I said, if I was to put 60 gigahertz in there, and obviously 60 gigahertz is the spectrum that Ofcom and others are encouraging, the FCC are encouraging people to use freely. So obviously some of this spectrum is worth a lot of money. So if I say to you, look, here's a bit of the spectrum that's free, well, you're going to try and use it, aren't you? So, but if you use 60 gigahertz, the signal doesn't travel in air. The reason it doesn't travel in air is because of the waveform. The waveform gets stuck in an oxygen molecule. And when it gets stuck in an oxygen molecule, if you pulse it at the right frequency, what happens? You break the oxygen molecular bond, and then you've got oxygen atoms. Those oxygen atoms then attach to O2. You get O3. And O3 will kill all biological life. It's
okay. Let me jump in here again. Okay, well, so they took your reactor and somehow or another got it over here to the United States, and somebody who knew about telecommunications took a picture of all this stuff and sent it to you and said, "What is this?" And you said, "Oh, well, I know what it is because I designed it and I'll also have a patent on it." Right? Okay. All right. Now,
it had nothing to do with my weapons background, and that's why I'm pretty sure God sent me here for a reason.
Okay. Now,
inexplicable connection. I mean, it's like chalk and cheese. Obviously, I know about weapon systems, but the CO2 reactor I didn't even think about that being a weapon. I thought I was trying to do something to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions out of the flue.
Okay, I absolutely agree that you, that you're God inspired to be here. Your story, I would like to someday write your story because it is like one synchronicity, one more divine intervention. Yes, there's nobody on the face of the earth. I mean, I've been at this thing for 40 years. I knew about all this. 40 years I'm fighting it, and all of a sudden you show up and you're like the only person that would understand what this stuff was. And you had the courage to step outside the box and say, "Hey, people, wake up." And God bless you. God bless God for sending you, in my opinion. Now, I just want to let people know that, Mark is got a divine hand on his shoulder. He says, "God's got my back," and I absolutely believe it. But the weirdest thing about it is this continual coincidence. I mean, you got the first pieces of equipment because you were harassing a guy on a telephone pole and he threw it at you. I mean, that guy was divinely inspired to throw you what you needed to show Sasha Stone, who then said, "Oh my God, this is real." Because you had forensic evidence that you presented to him. He went out and he made Apocalypse Now that if you haven't seen it, you better see it. It's still, the best film I've seen on the overall picture of it. Now, this thing with somebody in America showing you this these pictures of your device. But now your device is not going after carbon dioxide. It's actually breaking down. Is it breaking down the carbon dioxide and making too much oxygen so that then the oxygen has nothing else to do except to attach to other oxygen molecules, creating oxygen three times, three molecules of oxygen. Oxygen is ozone, and ozone in high quantities is deadly. Correct?
Yeah, 3 atoms. The three atoms of oxygen, they go through O3. And O3 is toxic, 50 parts per million, to kill all biological life. In fact, we use it in water plants to kill.
Right. Yes, it's very well known. It's very well known to be able to kill all sorts of things, including human beings, if it's too high.
That's what they're hanging them on honestly, they're hanging reactors on telegraph poles in the US. I said, well, at least the target acquired and shoot those. You lot are just going to gas you. So they're going to gas the Americans. They're going to shoot us.
And by gassing, you're saying that these things are so powerful, and I've seen the breakdown of it. We did another show where we showed the breakdown of it. And you're talking about that this device is so powerful that it heats up so much that it has to have its own cooling system.
They've got to have their own cooling system, otherwise you'd burn the radiators out.
Right. So this is not telecommunications, boys and girls. This is actually creating a situation where using these devices that most of us would never have understood, I mean, this person was in telecommunications, they didn't know but they bring it to the one person in the world that would understand what this is. And what you're saying is that this device turned on, high power, can create so much O3 that everything around it is going to die.
Yes.
And that's what was on a telephone pole in the United States. And I believe, I remember you saying it was near some military or on a military base, correct?
I think the whole, whenever you're going to go to war with a country or, combat, you always take out command and control if you can. Obviously, you've got to try and protect the command and control against, but you always take command and control out, and then obviously everybody's run down like headless chickens. These ground-based arrays, so the ones with dielectric lens, they were overriding weapon systems. I've got no doubt that the target is US military bases, obviously UK, GCHQ bases, and the intelligence agency. Take them on first. I mean, once you've actually taken over command and control, it's an easy play. Now, who's behind that? Is I always say it's there. It's a very good, good description for the.
Okay, so for the audience, we don't know where all of these things could possibly be, but pay attention to your environment. You see things going up there that don't look right, and was this camouflaged as a 5G, or was it just a device that was on a telephone pole?
No, they've been told it's 5G. They've been told it's 5G. Well, like I said, 5G is a basket of different technologies. It is an array. It doesn't matter what it operates at. The densification. So let's say I fill a cityscape with a 2G system. So I go in every home, fill it out with a 2G, I'll kill you. And you see 5G is a weapon. So then let's do a little bit of what 5G is. 5G in all its different technical capacity. It's spectrum increase. So it's spectrum increase at the bottom and spectrum increase at the top. We talk about millimeter waves. Well, millimeter waves are pretty dangerous, but they're not as dangerous as sub-gigahertz. The reason why sub-gigahertz are far more dangerous because you can't get away from them. All right, where the millimeter waves, you can protect yourself with brickwork, concrete. The sub-gigahertz travels through brickwork and concrete with ease. In fact, what we're starting to see is vibration issues at reactor cores and reactor vessels, which is a bit of an issue. And also the bun walls, the concrete bun walls, hundreds and the concrete bun walls breaking, believe it or not. Well, that's what you get if you fill a cityscape full of smart meters, and you get that vibration. You get that molecular vibration. Obviously, these denser materials do allow you to store fatigue. And obviously, my background, mechanical engineering background, fatigue characteristics. So consequently, you can understand that I've got quite a bit of an understanding of how this energy, because these are square wave, there's a lot of different wave frequencies, but a lot of them are square waves, so it's basically a vibration in air, energy vibration in air, where it passes directly through a biological structure. It doesn't necessarily pass directly through your stainless steel nuclear reactor jacket or the concrete bun wall. What you do, you pour that energy in there and you vibrate it. Obviously, whenever anybody did any tests in relation to those stainless steel jackets or bun walls, what they didn't do, they didn't calculate the smart microwave radiation vibration energy coming from the city near you. Didn't take it into consideration. So consequently, you're fatiguing those materials And obviously, we get some of the very interesting specific frequencies, the ones we talked about before, about me breaking down the carbon dioxide molecule, and I can see disassociation with quite a number of very interesting where this is just, it's like a Pandora. They've opened Pandora's box, believers, and how we're going to put it back in. We've got to take these criminals to task. They've broken the law. They've broken God's law. God's got a contract with, let's say these Luciferians have a contract with God. The one in the contract basically is that they're going to look after us. I'm going to kill us. I'm going to sort of wipe it all out. Unfortunately, the plan, the scheme is exactly that. God's not happy. He's pretty annoyed, obviously. Consequently, retribution has to be, because somebody's going to have to, be found guilty of this particular crime. So it's about, that's what we need to do. We just need to get organised, get them into court. See, I don't believe there's a judicial system in the world that's going to allow genocide on its own people. So it's definitely up to people to get together, get out together and start dragging these wrongdoers there into the court systems, and let's see them square. Because we're too early. People sometimes get a bit despondent about some of the things I say, because it is pretty unpalatable, especially because it's true. Which makes it a lot worse. It'd be good if I was just making the whole thing up. Unfortunately, it's not.
Well, you would think that because it's so insane. I've been saying that it's like the old reality is turning into a cartoon story because it's so insane. And, the fact that you were there to see it, to start reporting and I had people that had been following me for years on the radio. And back in 2014, I said, this 5G thing that's coming out is a weapon system. And I had people that absolutely left me because I went there. And now they're coming back. Oh my God, you were right. Yes. Yeah. It was a weapon system. It has been a weapon system from the get-go. And for people to not understand that there is that, see, that's their problem, that's my problem, is to imagine that you've got people so evil that they would actually design a system of control. Okay, now, and it's layers, Mark, it's layers. You got the person out there that has been told that this is just for surveillance. This is a way to get ahead of crime, and they go, oh, good idea. It's like the carbon scientist. The carbon scientist went with what was being touted as the science, and they never really checked the data that was supposedly it was based on. Now they look at it and they go, oh my God, this is so crazy. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So it is getting crazier and crazier, but for the people out there that, think that Mark and I are insane talking about this, I have been talking about it for 40 years. This is not new information, but the fact that it is now out there and that we are getting people to wake up, it is a godsend in and of itself. The fact they're doing it this fast is an indication that they're desperate. They're trying to stop those of us that are waking up. Right?
The problem that they've got way too early, or far too early, and, fortunately for a lot of people, I live in Gateshead, and Gateshead Council rolled this crap out on top of me. Got a couple of my neighbours bleeding from the nose at night. I then started to investigate. As I started to dig deeper into the investigation, it all starts to get very, very dark, very, very secretive, and that's when the council then decided to run a campaign against me. Unfortunately, picked the wrong guy. So I was threatened to have police at the door, all that sort of stuff. I've got no respect for authority at all, especially when I'm breaking the law. Consequently, I knew, because I do know the law, and unfortunately for them, they have no authority. No authority has a right to harm man. That's a breach of God's law. God's law takes precedent of everything. And I know they've got a contract with God, and obviously breached it. So he's not happy. Obviously, he's not happy, and I'm one of his attack dogs. but I also have the knowledge and the technical scientific background to cause them a serious issue. So it's a problem for them.
Mark, when you were growing up, did you grow up with a real connection to God, or are you getting the connection now that you're older and you can see not just how awful things can be, but the fact that God is also there? Is this something that you grew up with, or is this something that you grew into?
Well, actually, when I was a kid, I had some when I was quite young. I had some very, very strange thoughts about that I wasn't off this planet. I didn't think I was from here. I didn't think that, even though I was, I had a mother and father, I didn't think I was related to them at all. So I just knew I was different. I used to look in the mirror and think there was something about us that I just couldn't put my finger on. And then I was about 8-year-old and I saw the break in the Matrix. I saw that whole, the architecture of what we perceive to be reality break away.
And you were 8 years old, you said?
I was 8, and I was absolutely terrified. But I lay awake at night.
So at 8 years old, you got it all of a sudden you just got a download, we call it, of what the Matrix in reality really is. Is that what you're saying?
I tickled something and I don't know what happened. I was a proper nerdy. I was a nerdy kid. I used to read books. I was a proper science kid. But I had this passion or a fixation in weapons. Now, this goes back to when I was very, very young. Guns, knives. Every time I went on holiday to buy a knife, every time I went to a bookstore, I'd buy a book on guns, weapons, military combat systems. But I was totally fascinated with things that kill people. Right? I was fascinated about nuclear weapons. I won an award at school. I was in junior school. I was pretty bright. I was bright. That's it. Academically, very, very bright up till about 11. I was very clever. And I was the cleverest kid in school. And I won an award. We used to get a book tournament. And went off to this bookshop in Newcastle, and I've got books on missiles, on hand weapons. So I always had this fixation. I always knew quite a lot about Hitler's secret weapons program, knew all about that, very, very well researched. And I used to write the weapons companies around the world, Colt, Purdy, all the gun makers. I used to write to them and ask them for that technical data on the, stuff like that, what the public domain. I used to clear all this stuff. So I was a proper nerd. I was like one of these, like a bit of a freak show, really. And I was quite good architecturally, so I used to draw, and I had in art. All I used to draw in art was all weapons, planes, guns, military people, Nazi signs, or the Earth sign, all that sort of, because I understood the symbology of the Roman Empire. So I'm pretty interested in all that thing. I understood the power of that symbology because it is spiritual. It's not, everybody thinks that Hitler just had that Nazi sign for pants. It's the Earth sign, right? And if you look into the spiritual side of it, it's how he came to power. Let's be honest, he was spiritualist. He was, it's all that occult, that sort of cultism. You can see it in the signs if you go and look in the US Congress, you'll see the quivers, you see the fascist Nazism, fascism, quivers at each side of the speaker's desk. Those arrows with axing, it's what Mussolini used. So Mussolini, he came to power, he was a fascist, and he was into all of that same type of symbology. So the symbology side is quite interesting to me. It's quite interesting how you see other countries like eagles, and then you see the Nazi eagle, you see the US eagle. It's all that symbology. It's quite an interesting subject. So I was really interested in all that sort of stuff. Never have I interested in religion. Always hated being in church. I couldn't. When I went to a church, I think somebody had slandered us with, oh, I couldn't be able to get out. Now that I know all about God, what actually happened, a prophet contacted me and she's asked us about the Save Us Now movement. You know, the sun's rising, bring humanity up. And that was basically something that just came out of my head, but didn't come out of my head really. You know exactly where it came from, where the adventures come from. God, this is universal forces, or the power, the sort of things that come out of nowhere. You can't really put your finger on it; it just comes out of nowhere. So I was quite taken aback by this lady as it happens, and she started telling us things, and it was like reading a book that we've read before. It was really powerful. I mean, really powerful.
Okay, I don't know if you're hearing it, but there has been a continual, let's say, disturbance in the signal.
No, I'm not hearing it.
Okay. I mean, they are messing with the signal. I've been on thousands of hours of radio. I have never heard this sound before. It is, but they're screwing with us. Let me put it that way. So what you're saying is very, very important. And and that's why I keep coming in to try to explain, because I'm not sure if it's just me that's not hearing it or it's actually going on the tape. But so from birth, you were on a mission to understand weapon systems. And you're the only person in the world that would have pegged the LED as a weapon system unless you had inside information like I did. Okay, that this was something that was conceived as a weapon system from the get-go. They've been working on this for decades. I knew about it in the 70s. So right now, when you looked up at that LED light and you saw what you saw, that it was weaponized, what happened to you emotionally? Did you realize that this is your life's mission? This is what you had been trained for your entire life? That you were in the battle?
I knew what actually happened. I knew I was in a battle. I had this prophet contact me from Scotland, and she told me that she'd seen this whole vision, and it was all about this Save Us Now. Now, we came up with that as a political movement because we weren't getting any traction. All the political parties showed up behind 5G. Now, I know that, obviously, from what I've already gathered, it was part of the sophisticated weapon system. So obviously these people are fools. They're not listening to what the general public was saying. The arrogance and the ignorance is unbelievable. However, there's something a lot more sinister than that, because a lot of these people get into positions of power through corruption, paedophilia. That hasn't just happened by chance. So people who sort of crawled up to the greasy pole, they've done everything they've had to do to actually get up there. So what we decided was to set this organisation of this Save Us Now, the sun. It's the sun. The sun's rising, bringing humanity up. So what actually happened, she said to us, who came up with that? I said, well, it was me. I didn't know what to call the movement. Consequently, we went with the sun. And I thought, well, Save Us Now fits with sun. Sun's rising, bringing humanity up. Both things started to fit together. Anyway, we got it. We sort of registered the political party, and she contacted me and said, "Well, this is really interesting. Do you know about Isaiah 61?" And I said, "Well, what's that?" Because obviously I knew what the Bible was, and I had a cursory look at it. However, I'm, like I said, not religious one little bit. I do understand about God and the great geometrician of the universe. And obviously, I get that because I understand about the maths, I understand about the fractals, I understand the maths, I understand quantum mechanics. I also understand the simulation theory, the matrix. Yeah? Somebody built it. Anybody that tells me it just happened because it was the Big Bang, you're crazy. Now, that anybody that thinks that this is most of the world's leading scientists basically believe in the Big Bang should all be in mental institutions. That just shows you the ignorance. And the reason why they believe in it is because it draws a line under them actually having to delve into the fact that something else, some intelligence actually designed and built the universe. And I know that as a matter of fact. And I'll tell you how I know that is because it's always a little bit that you have to dig into. It's like, when you get a smooth ball and there's a little hair sticking out of that smooth ball, and you start to think, well, why is that hair sticking out there? Well, nothing fits correctly. There's always that little chink in anything in the whole matrix for people to, or obviously people that have a mind that can think and obviously interrogate the world around them to go, hang on a minute, there's something needs to be investigated there. And you start to pull at that thread, and the thread starts to develop and opens up other things to start to look at. So there's the whole God. I mean, I could probably sit and have a conversation and explain to you how I know that God exists. I'd love to have a conversation.
Well, let's do that. Let's plan on having that kind of a conversation. But right now, I promised that I'd get you out of here in an hour. And I'm 2 minutes late. Mark, thank you so very much. Let's reschedule and we'll have that God conversation because that's what the real story is all about.
That's what this story. Well, did you listen to Alex Jones the other night talking about God?
Oh, really? I didn't hear him.
Absolutely. I was like, hang on a minute, Alex. He's definitely hitting. I think there's a vibration. Everybody's starting to understand. And you see, I've always said from day one, 5G is the key. It's not to be concerned about. I mean, obviously, quite a significant number of people are going to die. We've got to be concerned about that. However, unfortunately for them, it's ignorance that's going to kill them. It is ignorance that's going to kill them. So the 5G narrative, right, it's a bit like fitness. Over years where people sort of, the cleverer, the better survive, so the fitter the population become. Well, the people that understand about what 5G actually is, and the people that act appropriately in relation to it, they're the ones that are going to survive. The people that don't, the ignorant, unfortunately, are going to die forever. And they're already dead. If you look at the contracts with, the Roman Empire, these people are already dead, already registered dead. And this goes back to prophecy. The prophecy states, raise the people from the dead, and that's what we're doing. We're raising them all because they're all dead. The only people who aren't dead are the people who have decided to wake up. And this goes back to, it's all prophecy. And like I said, this whole thing came totally new. This came to me about 12 months ago. I was totally blown away by the way. I mean, if people can't believe 5G, they'll find a lot more difficult getting this around their head, because I did. But like I said, it was when I was talking to this woman. Everything she was saying, I knew to be true. She knew things about me that nobody knows. She also knew, well, it's my name, Mark. See, you've got to remember that Kabbalah have overstepped the mark. And my second name is Steele. Steele means sword. It's all in the prophecy. I mean, you couldn't make it. And it's not just that. You couldn't make this stuff up. So we definitely do need to write a book when the time comes. But it's very, very interesting times. And, for everybody that listens, be confident we win. God put me here for a reason. Put me here to win, because I'm a winner. And I'll never take a fight from that I'm not going to win.
Well, that book title should be, You Can't Make This Shit Up.
Nancy, I swear, if you told me, if you were having this conversation 2 years ago, I would think you'd lost me.
Lots changed in 2 years, Mark. Listen, thank you so very, very much for being here. And anybody that wants to know more about Mark, you can go to cosmicreality.com and go to the drop down under radio, and you'll see the shows that we've already done with Mark over the last couple of years, or year, or whatever it is. And the other thing is that Mark's website is, what is it? Save Us Now. .org.
Save us now. What I want to say to people, get involved. You know, it's up to all of us. You know, God didn't put me on this planet, right, as a snowflake. I'm not good at talking. I'm a lot better at action. All right, so it's about taking action. This is about everybody getting organised and taking action, because that's what we're here for. You see, to survive it, it's not about, you know, getting on your knees and praying to God for forgiveness. That might help a little bit. It's not going to save you. What's going to save you is fighting back. Because we are the resistance. So to save us now, the emblems, I'd suggest anybody in the US listening to this, get involved, set your own cells up, because the resistance is rising, and it's about resistance and how we stop this and how we bring these criminals to justice. Because here, God hates injustice, and the injustice that's been perpetrated on mankind for a lot of different reasons for the last, few thousand years, to be fair. So it's got to end. And the only way it will end is when we take these criminals through the court system. And, you know, even the people who support the corrupted court systems, we take them through as well, because what you've got to remember, it's all documented. So all the crimes that have ever been committed against us, it's time for us to see that there's some justice.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you. Anytime you feel like coming on radio, let me know, and we'll get that God discussion done.
Okay. Thanks for that, Nancy. Cheers.
All right, darling. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Be safe, baby. Okay, so now what do I do? All right, I've actually got a plan here. I don't know if you guys were having the same problem with that weird noise coming over the station. There was nothing I could do about it. It was definitely not coming from my system. And it may have just been, you know, a technical glitch. But like I say, I've been thousands of hours on doing this, and I have never heard that thing before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a 3.5 minute song, Natalie Rise, Generations Will Rise. And then I'm going to play a tape that is of Claire Edwards, and she was at an Oslo, Norway conference. She is the person who got up before the United Nations and talked directly to the United Nations regarding the fact that they had put a 5G capable, it was probably 4G, but intensified, you know, but it had done something that was being called 5G, so we'll just keep calling it 5G, even though now you know it's much more than that. 5G is a plan of, you know, it's a 5G death march, in my opinion. But Claire went before the United Nations because she was a United Nations employee, and I think she was the head of this office, and she saw this and then brought it to the attention of all the United Nations members in a General Assembly environment, including, you know, whoever's the president right now. And now she's into 5G. She's an advocate, and she was talking at an Oslo convention, talking about 5G. So I'm going to play the Generations Will Rise, and then it'll go right into Claire's tape, and it's only 23 minutes, but she's actually going to be talking about the satellite systems, okay, which, well, she'll tell you about it. So here we go.
So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming, and I'd like to thank Einar for organising this. So we've heard a lot of facts today. I didn't understand all of them, but I'm sure you did. So I actually don't want to present my presentation at this stage because I want to say something different. I'm here representing Gaia, representing Mother Earth. We all remain very much in the intellect, and we've heard a lot of facts today. But we need to move to the heart, because actually, for me, 5th generation, 5G, for me, it generates the principle of care. The reason that you are here today is because you care. The reason that I am here today is because I care. And everything I realize that I have been involved in this now for a number of years, 5G for the last 16 months. And what has driven me always is the principle of care, because I was working at the UN and they put up these public access points on the ceiling, and I knew that these would damage the people that I worked with, and I wanted to stop that. And so last year I ended up going to the Secretary General and telling him that these were very, very dangerous, and he ignored me. And about a year ago, Professor Martin Paul submitted a document to ICNIRP criticizing their revised guidelines. And I edited that document, and a number of people sent comments. And there was one man in particular where I was going back and forth, picking up the comments and making a note of the comments. And I went and I opened this particular comment, and this man said, I am electro-hypersensitive, he said. I'm affected by this electromagnetic radiation, and this world is hell for me because nobody takes any notice. And if 5G comes, I may end my life. Well, I burst into tears. I cried and cried for 10 minutes about this man and how the world had abandoned him. So what always drives me is the principle of care. And the fact that you have come here today demonstrates that you also care. So I'd like to move now from the facts and the intellect, and I'd like to move to the heart, to how we feel about this. So take a moment, please. You've listened to the facts now. What do you feel? What do you feel in your solar plexus now about this? Because that is what drives you. And I am not driven by fear. None of us are driven by fear. This is not a motivator. Love is a motivator. And we heard earlier from Michael Chapman Pincher about the butterfly. This is the only insect that we love, he told us. And this is the only insect that survives electromagnetic radiation. There's nothing more powerful in this universe than love. And it's love that will save us from electromagnetic radiation. So we have the beautiful Earth. What you see here is our beautiful mother planet, surrounded by the space debris that exists already. So already there are millions of pieces of space debris up there. And one of the major considerations for the UN, I used to edit the documents in Vienna for the committee that deals with outer space. And their major concern was two things: space debris and weaponization. So year after year after year, they talked about the concern of space debris. And now we're faced with a situation where the plan is to put up 53,000 satellites in space. So this has to be disastrous. You can see here, this is the Earth. This is what our brain looks like, and this is what the universe looks like. As above, so below. Our brains function on the Schumann resonance, 7.83 hertz, which is the resonance of the Earth. We're connected to the Earth. I'd like you to take a moment to think about your connection with the Earth, your emotional connection with the Earth. For me, I often look up at a tree and I look through the leaves and I see the sun filtering through and twinkling, and the leaves are radiant green, and it moves me, it touches me. This is my connection with this planet. What's your connection with the planet? Take a moment to think about what is it that has particularly resonated with you. Is it your connection with water, with snow, with the trees, with the animals? What's your connection in your heart? What do you feel about your connection with your planet? And are you going to allow your planet to be destroyed? We have to think about not just the terrestrial 5G, but the fact that these satellites would surround the entire Earth and blanket the entire planet, putting everything in jeopardy. Not just humans, as we've heard, but wildlife, the entire environment. This is what we really care about. I talked to Sissel. I've been staying with Sissel, and she told me about being electro-hypersensitive for 35 years. Now, last year, I live in Vienna, and my friend in Vienna, Swedish friend, became electro-hypersensitive. And I watched this happen over just the space of 3 weeks. She became electro-hypersensitive. And we drove around trying to find a place where she was not tortured. She was tortured in her eyes, in her ears, every part of her body. She had buzzing organs. She couldn't function. And in the end, we slept in the woods in my car because I didn't want her to sleep alone in the woods. So we slept together in the woods for 2 nights because this was the only place where she could be free from the electromagnetic radiation. And in the end, she left Austria. Within 1 week, she had to drive away from Austria because she could not be there. She was tortured everywhere. So she left the country after living there for 30 years. And she left. And she left her children. She was divorced, but her children were still teenagers. So she left her family and she went back to Sweden. So this is the global electric circuit of the Earth. And Einar asked me to describe the mechanism by which the satellites would affect us. Well, what I found when I did the research is that just because we've named the global electric circuit does not mean that we understand it. We don't understand it. It's far, far too complex. And you need scientists from many, many different fields to study this. It's not understood. So what kind of madness is it to be putting up 53,000 satellites there when we don't know the consequences? So these are the companies that are putting up these satellites. And I think just last week, Musk and his SpaceX company applied for permission to put up 30,000 more. So now we have a total planned of 53,000. So what we do know is that the ionosphere and the magnetosphere amplify the radiation by 100,000 times. So these are the symptoms that electrohypersensitive people have. And in 1998, the very first satellites went up, and my writing partner on the appeal, Arthur Furstenberg, kept records of what happened at that time. Now, that was only 66 satellites, not 53,000. So they found that thousands of homing pigeons lost their way. People had asthma attacks, nosebleeds, knife-like sensations in the head, stabbing pains in their chest, feeling like you're going to have a heart attack. These are exactly the symptoms that my Swedish friend had last year. And particularly the US national death rate rose 4 to 5%. Now, power line harmonic radiation, it's already established that the power line harmonic radiation is having an effect on the ionosphere and the magnetosphere. We know that already. It's established. We also know from studies that these rockets that will launch the satellites, they produce black soot. So this is going to be devastating for the climate. The space debris issue, so as I said, we have already millions of pieces of space debris up there, and you have the issue of a Kessler syndrome. So there's a hypothesis by a man called Kessler who posits a cascade effect where you reach a point where you have so much debris that it starts colliding, all the pieces start colliding with each other with a cascade effect. And he says if this happens, then the space orbits could be unusable for thousands of years. And we do depend on satellite. We depend on satellite for our weather forecasting, for our communications, for our aircraft, for remote sensing the Earth. There are lots of reasons why we're already quite dependent on satellites, and we can't afford to lose the Earth orbits. There's a project that you're probably aware of, I imagine, which is called HARP. And you have, it's an ionospheric heater, and you have this also in Tromsø in Norway, which is part of it. And I think it's interesting that there are very close parallels between HARP and 5G. So, both of them use banks of antennas in phased arrays. Both of them have a beam-forming ability. Both can be used as a communications system. Both of them have the capacity to disrupt people's mental function. They can both impair brain performance of very large populations. So whole regions of people's mental function and emotions can be changed by this. Both of them can do voice-to-skull communication, putting a voice into people's heads. Both of them can heat the skin, which has already been discussed today. They can both change people's emotional state, manipulate thought and behavior, and we know this from Iraq. During the war in Iraq, the Iraqi soldiers just put down their arms, their weapons, because they had been fed a frequency which put them into fear and panic. So we have the proof of this. And it can also, both of them can also make individuals very slow or hyperactive. And we also know this from electrohypersensitive people. Now, we've had a whole lot of warnings from different people about the threats of 5G. This is what Professor Martin Paul says could be the results: breakdown in mental function, sterility, damaged heart function, and societal collapse. So imagine if people's brain function is affected. And we know that the brain function is already affected from 25 years of cell phones. The Russian president has said that the hope that new technologies would help, would save the planet, turned out to be illusions. An EU report this year has told us that it's not possible to accurately simulate or measure 5G emissions in the real world. We simply don't know the consequences. All we can do is extrapolate from the science that we have from earlier generations of wireless technology to imagine that 5G would be much worse given what we know about the technicalities of 5G. More warnings. So you have NOAA and NASA in the United States that are saying that this could seriously affect their work. It could seriously affect weather forecasters' ability to predict major storms, and it could lead to loss of life. So, as I said, 5% of the world's population are already tortured by microwave sickness. It's called electrohypersensitivity because when you call it electrohypersensitivity, it points the finger at the person. Oh, you are electrohypersensitive. You have a problem. No. The person is exposed to an environmental toxin. That's the problem. It's not that that individual is particularly special. We're actually already, all of us, affected by it, but to different degrees. And we don't know why some people are more affected sooner than others. It's just, it's not known at this stage. Now, Switzerland is very much the epicenter of all this. They had 5G earlier than some of the other countries. And so we already have evidence from Switzerland about how the people in Geneva are suffering. The precautionary principle. The precautionary principle should be invoked when there is any doubt. We have already in excess of 28,000 studies which talk about the biological effects of electromagnetic radiation. But we don't need 28,000 studies to invoke the precautionary principle. This is enshrined in EU law. If there is one study which casts doubt and presents dangers, that is enough to invoke the precautionary principle. So you have a number of governments, the governments of Austria, Belgium, Germany, Netherlands. In the Germans' case, it was the Federal Office on Radiation Protection, which said that 5G would expose people to very much higher levels of electromagnetic radiation. And the fact that they have all drawn attention to the dangers of 5G should mean that they invoke the precautionary principle. They haven't done so. So what we have is a collapse in the rule of law. We have laws that should be protecting us, and they're not being invoked. You have a lot of legal cases going on right now. There's a huge amount of pushback right around the world. People bringing cases against the Federal Communications Commission and the governments and the telecommunications companies. So these are some of the legal cases in the different countries. You've got liability actions going on. We have to be aware that the insurance companies and the reinsurance companies will not provide insurance against any damage or injuries from electromagnetic radiation. And there's another liability case in the Netherlands here where people are claiming compensation in advance against what may happen if 5G is rolled out. And more in the UK, in the US. We do have a liability convention. So there is a space liability convention, and the liability convention says that any launching state is liable under the liability convention. So this is a state which launches or procures the launching of a space object, and a state from whose territory or facility a space object is launched. So under the liability convention, they must require these commercial companies to have insurance. But the commercial companies are commercial companies. By definition, you don't allow a commercial company to go into space. No commercial company, I mean, they have limited liability. So how can you allow them to put space objects up there? They are not going to be careful about space debris. Whatever undertakings they may make, ultimately they are commercial companies and they won't be bothered. So, for me, I find myself in Norway, and I was reminded as we were talking last night that Norway is the country of Edvard Munch. And what has been in my mind the whole time that I have been dealing with 5G, this image from Edvard Munch, the scream. This is how I feel about 5G. It's a scream from my innermost being. So this is about love. And 5G generates love. It generates more and more love in me as I go on with this campaign. And every terrible thing that I hear about 5G just actually motivates me with more compassion for the fellow inhabitants of this planet, whoever they are, human beings or insects, wildlife, the trees. It's the compassion and it's the love that drives me. So I would say to you, we have to pass through the fear about 5G. Once you really understand what 5G is, you feel a terror such as you've never felt in your life, when you truly understand it, because this is potentially an annihilation event for the entire planet. But you move beyond that fear. That fear is actually liberating, and where you come to is love. And I think that you will be there very soon.
Okay, Claire Edwards in Oslo in October 26th. I think that was the date, but it was October. She puts it, well, both of these two people that, if you've been with me for the whole time, Mark and Claire, and myself, and everybody else that I know of personally that's an activist, when you begin to see the full ramifications of what they're calling 5G, it is very scary. Now, I've been at it for 40 years. I knew it was planned. I didn't go through the shock and awe of finding out about it. I was surprised I had actually done a radio show in 2014 on 5G. Didn't remember doing it. But what we've got here is this last year, was it last year or was it this year? I think it was the first of this year. All of a sudden, I thought I had until 2020 before they would really start to deploy it. And I was hoping that by that time we'd have shungite pretty much in play so that we could change the aspects of the 4G, because 4G, even in intensification, can be turned around without changing the technology by shungite. I've just written a book, Shungite Reality. You can actually go to cosmicreality.net and buy a pre-publication edition of it. It's written, it's just we're going through the editing and the indexing, because I want this index to be really good so that because I write about the same subject but from different perspectives, and I want this to be a handbook on shungite. But the reality is that the 4G intensification, the proliferation of this system has put us on the brink of what scientists dubbed the sixth extinction event, and it's ongoing. What does that mean? We're talking about the fact that microorganisms in the soil, and they don't get enough play on this, but the microorganisms in the soil, how many people are having trouble with their gardens? I know I am. I used to grow the most amazing tomatoes without effort, and now I can't grow anything. Okay, chemtrails, yes, but also the fact that the microorganisms, the things that make the soil alive, are dead from Wi-Fi. So when you are, realizing that it begins at the very level of basic life, the one-celled kind of life, and then you get into the insect world. Well, the insect world, by estimates, by scientists who knew about this 10 years ago or more, and were freaked out, but they didn't know what to do because they didn't even know what was causing it. So they did nothing. They put their heads in the sand and hoped it went away. And one guy said, just kiss your kids goodbye and enjoy your life because we don't have long to go. A scientist, certified, PhDs and all that. So what the estimates are is that in certain areas of high densification, you've got 0 insects. In areas that have, Wi-Fi, fourth generation, you have at least a 70% decrease in insects. Now, things eat insects, like frogs and lizards. Frogs and lizards are eaten by things like foxes and raccoons and then on top, it's the pyramid of life. It's the way I'm not happy with it. I designed it different, but it's the wheel of life. And everybody depends on those that are below them in the pyramid of life. Well, we're at the top. And if the rest of it goes, we're standing on nothing. We're gone. Now, is the planet going to, no, the planet will survive. In fact, in areas where there is no Wi-Fi, there's certain areas that they still haven't quite got it there, except now they got the satellites. Now you just heard Claire talking about 53,000 satellites. They want to kill everything, apparently. So, when I realized in 2019 that, in fact, they were already deploying it. The system in many cases is already up. It's just not active yet. In the rural areas. See, they went through the rural areas because there was nobody to figure out, well, what are they doing? No curious onlookers. So when I realized that oh wow, they're putting this out much faster, I got a picture in my head, and it was just a line in the sand. Like somebody had taken a stick and put a line in the sand. Actually, I saw a line go through the sand, line in the sand. And I realized that this was an indicator to me that we were on the brink of, the final battle, maybe. I knew that if we didn't stop 5G, game's over. And having been fighting it for as long as I did, I thought, oh, there's no way in hell we're going to win. But then, Michael, Henry Dunn, myself, Michael pushed me into going in and creating Radio 5G. I couldn't believe how fast things were turning around. Now, right now, I want to talk about something that happened just, what's today's date? 20th, in the last 10 days. And this is where it gets frustrating because myself, I can only do what I can do. Michael's better at getting things, but normally somebody on Facebook will post something that, tells me more about 5G than I get anyplace else. But I had never heard of what had actually happened. So I want to go back, to, let me see, when was the date on that? Okay, it was in August. Was it last year? Let me just look here. Sorry, I'm having August 9th. Okay. Okay, on August 9th, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit issued a decision substantially setting back the efforts of the Federal Communications Commission to expedite the deployment of densified 4G/5G, so-called small cell towers. The FCC had issued an order in March 2018 eliminating environmental and historic preservation review of densified 4G plus 5G so-called small cells. The FCC had reasoned that even though the industry planned to deploy as many as 800,000 of these 50-foot, possibly taller towers in neighborhoods and historic districts around the country by 2026, it was not in the public interest to review their potential impacts on the environment and historical places. The court vacated the portions of the order that exempted small cells from NPA and NHPA reviews, delivering a setback to FCC's efforts to speed up small cell deployment. Cases challenging another recent FCC order that limits local government control over small wireless facilities is currently pending before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. In an appeal brought by the Natural Resource Defense Council and several Native American tribes, the court found, this is the case we're talking about, that the FCC had failed to adequately address possible harms of its deregulatory efforts and the benefits of environmental and historic preservation review. In particular, the court observed that the FCC had failed to address the cumulative harms that may result from densification. And this is some of them. The crowding of municipal cell towers in a limited area. The potential harm from co-location of multiple cell antennas on a pole simultaneously transmitting voice and data on multiple frequency bands. The FCC quickly and prematurely deploying this densification of wireless telecommunication facilities scheme before the FCC had completed its ongoing investigation into the potential health effects of pulsed, data-modulated radio frequency electromagnetic microwave radiation from antennas in such close proximity to where people live, work, study, play, sleep, and heal. Antennas installed as close as 15 to 50 feet from homes and only 25 to 50 feet off the ground. The court found that the FCC order was arbitrary and capricious and therefore unlawful. Consequently, the court vacated the FCC's Order 18-30, thereby reinstating prior regulations requiring environmental and historic preservation reviews of densified 4G and 5G cell tower deployments. Okay, this is Attorney Edward B. Myers, M-Y-E-R-S, and intervenor in the case stated, I intervened in opposition to FCC order because the order represented a precipitous effort to jam thousands of 4G, 5G towers into virtually every neighborhood in the country, including mine, based on woefully outdated RF EMR exposure guidelines. The effort of the FCC to develop meaningful RM EMR exposure guidelines, especially with regard to health impacts of pulse data modulated radio frequency electromagnetic microwave radiation emitted by small cell towers, are practically non-existent. I am grateful by the court's decision, which in my view is a cautionary tale against the arbitrary and capricious efforts of the FCC to dispense with NEPA review. The three-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals issued its unanimous ruling. Okay, and let's just see. Okay, the FCC also failed to adequately address possible harms of deregulation and benefits of environmental and historical preservation review, which means the Commission's deregulation of small cells is thus arbitrary and capricious. 4G and 5G and small cell frequencies impact wildlife. For example, research finds the radiation alters bird navigation, disturbs honeybee colonies, damages trees, and impacts plants. Research on insect and 5G finds that their bodies can absorb up to 3 times more power from 5G millimeter wave frequencies. And this could lead to major changes in how they behave and function, affecting the capacities of bees and other insects to pollinate. Published reviews on 5G millimeter waves and wireless, even from decades ago, have cataloged a host of harmful impacts, including increased temperature, altered gene expression, faster cell growth, inflammatory and metabolic process, damage to the eyes and cellular stress, memory problems, sperm damage, genetic damage, behavior issues, and brain damage. In 2018, 19 tribal groups, the Natural Resource Defense Council and attorney Edward B. Myers, filed requests for reconsideration. As Myers stated in his press release, the FCC has ignored the requirements of federal law by ruling without having conducted any impact analysis that so-called small wireless facilities are not likely to have any significant environmental impact and therefore do not require any prior review. The FCC also failed to meet its responsibilities under the Communication Act to ensure that its actions promote health and safety. So this came out in, what did I tell you it was? It was August 10th, 2019. Okay, so that was August of this year. Well, now what just recently happened is that let me see, do I have that up yet? No. Okay. Let me get this thing. Okay. Okay, this is how it starts out. The Federal Communication Commission last year approved an order that exempted most small cells. Okay, that's what they had done. Then the FCC claimed its deregulation of small cells was necessary to spur deployment of 5G networks. But the Commission was sued by the United Kiowa Band of Cherokee Indians in Oklahoma, the Blackfeet Tribe, and the Natural Resources Defense Council. The FCC order was of particular interest to tribal groups because it affected construction on sites of religious and cultural importance to federally recognized Indian tribes, the judges noted. The order also effectively reduced tribes' role in reviewing proposed construction of the towers and other wireless facilities that remain subject to cultural and environmental review. The FCC's opponents argued that the elimination of historic/preservation and environmental review was arbitrary and capricious, that it violated both the NHPA and NEPA, and that the charges to tribes' roles in reviewing construction was arbitrary and capricious. A 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals of the District of Columbia Circuit issued a unanimous ruling today. And what they were doing was upholding the first ruling. Okay, so it had been appealed. This is the appeal. And again, they found for the original court decision that the FCC is bonkers and they can't do it anymore. Judges wrote that the order does not justify the Commission's determination that it was not in the public interest to require review of small cell deployments. In particular, the Commission failed to justify its confidence that the small cell deployments pose little to no cognizable religious, cultural, or environmental risk, particularly given the vast numbers of proposed deployments and the reality that the order will principally affect small cells that require new construction. The FCC also failed to adequately address possible harms of deregulation and benefits of environmental and historical preservation. The judges, and it goes on. I mean, this gets into more of the guts of this is that they made first off, the fact that it was Native Americans that brought this case and got it through. I mean, to me, this is, again, another significant indication of the true network of humanity that is actually growing because of all the crap that the other people have been doing to us. It's like we're beginning to stand up and come together. Now, for those people that are actually out there fighting 5G, in the streets, in the buildings, you got to get on this information. There is a way, because now the responsibility falls to us to get it in the eyes of the commissions that are making these decisions, your city, your county, your state governments. You've got to get it in front of them, because they keep saying, well, the FCC says we have to do it. Well, no. The FCC's ruling has been overturned by court. But I guarantee you're not going to see that on mainstream TV. We've got to make them aware of it. So you do your homework here. Get the information. There's like letters that you can send to the people that, have told you, or you're just getting into it, that want to fall back on, it's not my problem because I was told to do this and blah, blah, blah. No, this is an incredibly important case. And it was, got them going because of the Native Americans. And, namaste to them. I mean, it's just, God bless these people. So the things that we've been talking about with Mark, and that was a very weird thing that was happening. I don't know if it went over the radio or not, the recording. But Mark, I mean, if you just look at his story, it's bizarre. Do I think a hand of God? If I didn't think a hand of God was in anything else, I think it's in the story about 5G and Mark being right next to the place they put it out first. A guy that, well, it's just like he said, as a kid he was fascinated with weapons systems, and he always looked at something as, how can I make it into a weapon? And boom, he looks at it and he goes, an LED street light, and goes, oh my God, that's a weapon. I mean, come on. And in time for the rest of us to react, in time for the Native Americans to come together and say, hey, dudes, no. And I mean, the thing of it is that how many times has the Native Americans stood up and say, hey, dude, no, and gotten stomped on? And this time they won? I mean, not only won, but the appeal was won. This is big. This goes beyond 5G. This goes into who are we, and what are we doing? So, Good. It's just like Claire said. 5G is love. Okay? Because it's forcing us to look at negativity and evil that I can't call it anything else. It's evil, to make us wake up and to hug each other and say, we can get through this. We can do this. And we're doing it. We're doing it one radio show at a time. You're doing it by talking to one person at a time sometimes. You know, a few of us get out there like Mark has and myself, you know, to be able to talk to large groups of people. I don't go out like he does. He actually goes up in front of people and talks to them. I don't do that. But you gotta believe in that there's a much more powerful spiritual entity out there protecting us, you know, allowing us to grow into who we are becoming. And I'm just darn honored to be here with you. That's it for this show. We're going to have recordings happening for the original recordings for the rest of the day. And I just thank you all for being here. This information is so intriguing. You know, the bad is bringing out the good. So, appreciate you all. See you next time.